Greetings, my friends, and welcome. It's great to have you here. A jam-packed 3 hours straight ahead from the Rush Limbaugh program as I sit firmly ensconced in the distinguished and prestigious Attila the Hun chair here at the Limbaugh Institute. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushmo@eibnet.us. So yesterday, when I spent a lot of time on CNN, and the fact that they will not retract the story that their only source is now admitting he lied about. CNN will not retract it. Remember what I said, ladies and gentlemen, as the reason why this was happening. I said they are protecting the reputation and the legacy of Carl Bernstein. Woodward and Bernstein. You know, Woodward and Bernstein did their Watergate stuff back in the 70s. And Woodward and Bernstein, well, Bernstein primarily has been all over the place, doing his brand of journalism ever since, and has not really stepped in it, but now 74 years old, and this is a doozy. This is an embarrassment, and CNN, I have no doubt, now everybody is speculating that this is the reason CNN is hanging tough and refusing to retract, is because that they feel the need, and probably Bernstein's working on them too, to protect his legacy. He's one of the three bylines on the story. The other one's Jim Sciutto, and I forget who else. What we're going to do in mere moments, we're going to go back and we're going to relive the day CNN announced this story. That was back on July 27th, and it was Allison Camerata in the InfoBabe anchorette chair, and they thought they had the scoop of the season. They thought they finally had it, that Trump had lied and that he had colluded with Russia because they had a source telling them it was Cohen and Lanny Davis, that Cohen had seen it, that Cohen had seen Trump. Cohen knew that Trump had done it. And this lie lasted for a month. It was finally exposed when Lanny Davis realized that Cohen testified before Congress saying something entirely different. When Cohen testified before Congress, he said he knew nothing about Trump having prior knowledge of the Trump Tower meeting. And that's under oath. So Lanny's sitting there saying, wait a minute, my client has told me that he saw Trump. And then Lanny, after Cohen told him that, sourced CNN. Lanny went to see, and why would CNN, have you ever thought of this, why would CNN use Lanny Davis as an anonymous source? I mean, everybody knows Lanny Davis, and at the time he's Cohen's lawyer, and he comes right off of the Clinton War Room reservation from the 70s. So why would Lanny Davis be an anonymous source? Why would CNN not name him? Does Lanny Davis not have credibility, or did CNN not want to identify that one of their sources was a warrior defending his client? Anyway, they didn't identify the source. Lanny Davis then finally, after a month of fundraising, after a month of a GoFundMe campaign, or a significant amount of time where Cohen had generated enough money to pay Lanny enough money for his tireless work, Lanny then starts calling everybody and saying, you know what, I made a mistake. My client didn't know. My client doesn't know. My client cannot say for sure. He wasn't there. My client totally made it up. And thus, I made him. Well, CNN will not retract any of this. And I speculated yesterday, just to be repetitive here, to make the point home, because I think there's any doubt about it, that at the top of the list of reasons why, I mean, it's not the only reason, but one of the primary reasons CNN's hanging tough is what's going to happen to him. Nothing's going to happen to him. How can they lose any more respect than they've already lost? How can their audience get any smaller significantly? What really is anybody going to do to him? Nobody's going to do anything to him. If anything, other media might get mad at them for misleading the rest of the media, because, you know, the Washington Post had to withdraw. They had to change their story. New York Times, but CNN's still hanging. What's going to happen to them? Nothing happens to any of these people on the side of this that are trying to nail Trump with bogus, trumped up, never happened evidence. If you're CNN, say, what's going to happen? They're not going to lose any respect. Nobody's going to give them any grief over it. May as well hang in. Continue to try to mislead as many viewers as possible and protect the image and the legacy of Carl Bernstein. So we'll circle back to this in a minute. Next thing, what blue wave, ladies and gentlemen? In Florida, in the governor's primaries yesterday, we had an interesting battle shaping up. Ron DeSantis, who, full disclosure, I know, and I have played a couple of rounds of golf with. I call him governor on the golf course. He says, he doesn't say, don't say that, don't you? I just, he'll make a good shot. Way to go, governor. He's a nice guy. I like him a lot. I've met his wife. But as you know, I don't endorse during primaries, and I didn't. But Trump did. Trump did an appearance for DeSantis, and Trump heartily endorsed DeSantis. DeSantis was double digits down when Trump starts working for him, and DeSantis wins by double digits. Now, who in the Republican Party can do that? Now, we're told that, Trump's, he's not what he was. People have lost their luster for Trump. All this rigmarole from the left. That people are fed up with Trump. That people wish they could get their vote back. That Trump embarrasses them. You know the drill. Except when you look at polling data, 90% of Republicans maintain that they are in total sync with Trump and completely approve of the job he's doing. 90%. What other Republican could take a fellow Republican double digits down and convert that into a double-digit victory? Could Mitch McConnell do it? Could Paul Ryan do it? Who could do this? But the interesting thing, in addition to that, is the turnout. 1,602,000 votes on the Republican side. 148,000, or 1,480,000 on the Democrats. I'm trying to do the math in my head here. That's a significant turnout advantage for the Republicans in a state the Democrats claim that they're going to win, because the people of Florida are also fed up with Trump. But this blue wave was supposed to be massively overwhelming the Republicans in turnout, and it didn't happen. Republican turnout, as I say, 1.6 million. Will round the Democrats up to 1.5. So basically, 116,000 votes more on the Republican side than the Democrat side. And in Arizona, another Republican blowout. It's 124,000 in Florida. The Republicans outturned the Democrats by 100,000 in the Arizona governor's race. But yet, we've been hearing about blue wave, blue wave, blue wave ever since last December when the first generic ballot polling data was released. We've continued to hear about blue wave. And of course we would, because the media is not at all objective and simply is now carrying the agenda of the Democrat Party. I think actually leading it, but that's neither here nor there. So in two states where the Democrats planned on making big bank, where the Democrats plan on turning things around, there was greater Republican turnout than there was Democrat turnout. Now, this is not enough to suggest that there's going to be a red wave. I fall back to my standard operating procedure on this, and that is nobody knows what's going to happen. But I can tell you one thing that the media is saying that isn't true. The media is relying on age-old formulas which say that the first off-year election after a new president is elected, the president's party traditionally loses 15 seats. And they say the reason for this is that voters in the president's party lose enthusiasm. They secured the victory for the president in the presidential race. And so the next midterms, 2 years after the presidential election, they're not nearly as fired up. They become complacent. And they don't realize the dangers that lie ahead. I'm sorry. You got to throw that formula out with Trump. You have to throw out much of the conventional wisdom and formulaic thinking that has existed inside the Washington establishment for years. The Trump voter is not complacent. Trump voters are not sitting at home, fat, dumb, and happy, thinking that the contests are over, that their work is done. They are far more sophisticated than that. Not only that, the drive-by media each and every day keeps the Republican base fired up, motivated, inspired, and even angry, far more than they know. You know, the subject of media bias is often discussed. And you've heard the leftists and the media say, well, we're not biased. You know, it's in a psychological sense, people who are biased may actually not know it. And I find that people on the left, particularly the higher up you go in the food chain in the left, the more ignorant they are about people not like them. They don't socialize with. They make no effort to understand. They never come in contact with people who are not like them. So what do they think of people not like them? That's where the bias is. They think that they're whatever they think they are. And then they attach their formulas to it. And so the media and the Democrat Party firmly believes that Trump's voters are a bunch of idiots because conservative voters are idiots. Trump voters are even bigger idiots because who could not be an idiot to vote for Trump? They've never taken the time to learn who Trump voters are. They've never spent any time with them. They're not curious. They don't care. And that's the bias. They attach all these old formulas. And they continue to apply conventional inside the Beltway wisdom to an outsider candidate and campaign, the likes of which they still don't understand and still resent. So I'm here to tell you that the primary foundational belief of their formula that the blue wave is going to happen, the fact that they are more motivated and more inspired, Democrat voters, and that Republican voters, Trump voters, don't realize the importance of the election or they're not inspired because they already won 2 years ago. Not true. I think the drive-by media itself keeps Republicans / conservatives / Trump voters fired up 24/7. I think, in fact, that many Republicans / Trump / conservative voters can't wait to vote just to stick it to the media. Even if some of them may have lost a little of their fervor for Trump, they still resent the hell out of the way the media is participating in this silent coup to destroy the guy they elected and to overturn an election that they won. I don't think motivated Republicans are going to be a problem. I don't think lack of motivation or lack of inspiration. And at the same time, I'm not sure I buy into this notion that the left is so chomping at the bit. It's a bunch of secretariats out there in the starting gate. They just can't wait. The turnout in special elections, the Democrats were not appreciably higher. In some of these primary elections that we've had, we don't see any evidence of blowouts on the basis of turnout. And we certainly didn't see it yesterday. But see, the difference is they are close-minded about it. And you can't talk them out of their belief that the midterms are essentially already over and that the Democrats are going to take the House and they can't wait to start these investigations to paralyze Trump and maybe finally get rid of him. You can't convince them that they're stereotypical, statistically formulaic, old-fashioned views. You can't convince them that they may not be able to rely on them. So they continue to report the news. They continue to do what they do with the belief that, like them, everybody now has become totally disgusted with Trump. And they're missing. And it's right in front of their face. Even after these elections yesterday, say in Florida and Arizona, even with the turnout differential, they're still going to be in denial about it. I've seen it on CNN. They come up with all kinds of cockamamie excuses to explain it. And the number one excuse is, well, come on, this is a special election turnout. Yeah, it's going to be much different in November. You wait. We can't judge it. You know, every election that's coming up, they predict that they're going to win it going away. Turnout, votes, you name it, it's going to be a slam dunk. When they lose it, or when the turnout's not what they think it is, they fall back to, well, it doesn't matter. This is not the kind of turnout where we're expecting this blue wave. That'll happen in November. You can't judge anything by these primaries or special elections. You can't. See, every time they lose an election, that election doesn't count. That turnout model doesn't matter. It can't be right. They continue to live in denial about why they're losing. So we shall see. I still believe that we haven't yet had the events that are going to shape the outcome in the election in the midterms in November. I believe it's still dicey to start polling people here in late August and to try to attach any solid meaning to that. Although I will say, well, I think that the media's behavior, the behavior of the Democrat Party, the whole Washington establishment, I think one thing you can count on is that Republican/Trump voters are fed up now, and they're going to stay fed up through November. It doesn't matter, because the media is going to keep lighting a fire under them every day, multiple times a day. Let me take a quick timeout, only because I have to. Back.
You're listening to Rush.
You think McCain could have taken a gubernatorial candidate down double digits in pre-election polling and turned him into a double-digit winner? I'm just asking. And here's another question. Has anybody seen Barack Hussein or Hillary Clinton on TV denying the news story that the Chinese government had real-time hacked access to Hillary Clinton's computer, her homebrew server and network when she was Secretary of State? Have you? I haven't seen that. Has anybody seen Obama and Hillary indignant? Anybody seen them on television flat out refusing, denying, saying this is absurd? Anybody seen that? You haven't. Why not? You realize what a hellacious charge this is? Well, everybody's thinking the Russians have. By the way, I think that all these people at the FBI, the McCabe's, the Strzok, the Pages, the Bruce Orrs, Comey, I think they all knew at the Chi-Coms what it is. Folks, it's real-time access to her computer. Not to mention the spy that was on Dianne Feinstein's staff for 20 years. The Chi-Coms essentially had a screen-sharing app, real-time. They simply could watch Hillary Clinton do whatever she did on her computer. And if she got an email from Obama, they could read it as she opened it. Real-time screen sharing is essentially what the nature of the hack was. And they're not denying it. I would think that if this wasn't true, why, we would have had flat-out denials. Instead, they're hoping the media not reporting it means nobody will see it. About the Florida governor's race, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump versus Andrew Gillum. That's Bernie Sanders and George Soros. And that's how people are looking at this. And yeah, that's going to become conventional wisdom. It's Trump versus Soros. It's Trump versus crazy Bernie. What it's going to be is the American founding versus Venezuela. The American founding versus socialism. That's what it's going to be. I understand the desire people have to personalize this, attach celebrities or personalities to the vote and so forth. But the substance of the governor election in Florida is real simple. It's conservative / the founding of America type government type of country versus this new brand of Democrat socialism, which is being advocated by the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And we will see as time unfolds. Let's now go to the audio sound bites. This is the CNN Lanny Davis story, and let me just review for you essentially what happened here. Back on July 27th, CNN breathlessly ran breaking news claiming they had an anonymous source. We now know that source was Lanny Davis. They had an anonymous source saying that it was now fact that Michael Cohen knew in advance, that Donald Trump knew in advance of the Trump Tower meeting involving Russians visiting and talking with his son. And CNN ran this story breathlessly as though they had finally discovered the Holy Grail. They had found the collusion that the media and journalists had been searching for over 2 years. They did not identify their source as Lanny Davis, which I still say remains very curious. Why would Lanny Davis be their anonymous source? I mean, they got a source. Everybody knows who Lanny Davis is. Lanny Davis is a dyed-in-the-wool, loyal Democrat advocate. He was and is the warrior for Cohen. And CNN lived off of this story for a month. And they kept hammering it and hammering it. And one of the bylines on the story for their website was Carl Bernstein of Woodward Bernstein. And nobody corrected the story, even though Lanny Davis knew this was not true. And he knew it wasn't true because Michael Cohen had lied. Michael Cohen testified to a congressional committee or two that he had no knowledge of Trump and the Trump Tower meeting. He didn't have any idea if Trump knew or didn't know. He had no idea if Trump went. He didn't know a thing. And that was his testimony. But he had told Lanny Davis something else, supposedly, which Lanny then told CNN, which CNN then ran their breaking news story and couldn't stop having orgasms live on cable television. And then Lanny figured out somehow, some weeks later, that Cohen had lied to him, which meant that Lanny had lied to CNN and the Washington Post, because when CNN ran the story, the Washington Post and CNN all independently confirmed it, they said. See, that's what journalism is all about. An outfit will run a story. The New York Times, Washington Post have not heard about it, so they get in gear and they try to confirm it with their own sources. And then they reported that they were able to confirm with their own source. Lanny Davis was the source for everybody. And then Lanny had to come clean at some point, which he did recently, by saying that he'd made a mistake. And there are actually two elements to this that Lanny had lied to CNN about. The Washington Post and New York Times have run their so-called corrections. The Washington Post has run a story really ripping Lanny Davis and Cohen for doing great damage to the case against Trump. Because now there isn't a case against Trump. Everything about the story was made up. CNN will not pull it. CNN will not correct it. CNN will not withdraw it. CNN will not change a thing. And that is because I'm convinced, as I said yesterday, they're dying to protect the reputational legacy of Carl Bernstein and Jim Sciutto. There are three other people on this. So let's go back to July 27, 2018. CNN's New Day co-hosts Allison Camerata and John Berman are breathlessly introducing the breaking news.
CNN breaking news.
We do begin with breaking news. For those of you who have not paid much attention to the Russia investigation, today would be a good day to start doing so.
Indeed.
Sources tell CNN that President Trump's longtime former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, has begun spilling the beans. One of the bombshells he reportedly wants the public to know is that then candidate Donald Trump knew in advance and approved of that June 2016 Trump Tower meeting in which Russians promised dirt on Hillary Clinton. And these sources say Cohen is prepared to make that claim to special counsel Robert Mueller.
Now, if this is true, it means the president lied about it publicly. It means that Donald Trump Jr. lied about it under oath. And it means the current president of the United States had knowledge of and approved of accepting Russian help during the campaign.
You can, folks that can barely keep their pants on. I mean, you can just hear it in their voices. The only problem is that none of that was true. Let me unpack it just a little. I'm not going to go through it line by line. Sources tell CNN that Trump's longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen's begun spilling the beans. One of the bombshells he reportedly wants the public to know is that Trump knew in advance and approved of the June 2018 Trump Tower meeting in which Russians promised dirt on Hillary. If Trump had known, there's no crime. There is no, this would be what people would call collusion, and it isn't a crime. Trump, this is all moot because none of this happened, but I'm just telling you in addition how weak the CNN case is here. The Russians also did not promise dirt on Hillary. Well, there were a couple of people that set the meeting up that said they had some dirt, but what this meeting was really about was a bunch of Russian adoption activists trying to get something called the Maginski Act changed. In other words, Trump Jr. was set up. The whole meeting was a setup. They had no Hillary dirt. There wasn't any Hillary dirt. And when Jared Kushner and Trump Jr. found out about it, the meeting ended. There wasn't any Hillary dirt. All there was an effort to lobby people who were not even in power to change the Maginski Act. I believe that this whole meeting was part of the setup run by the FBI and the deep state and all these other people. I think, just as they did not warn Trump when they supposedly found spies in his campaign. Well, we know they planted the spies, Stephen Halper and a couple others. This, I think, was a setup. They wanted this to happen so that they could then leak that it had happened to the media. Now, Allison Camerata says here, Michael Cohen has begun spilling the beans. He wants the public to know. Well, then why isn't he the source? Why is there not what Michael Cohen wants? And then the second, Cohen couldn't wait to tell Mueller. Cohen, said the story, wants to talk to Mueller. Cohen can't wait to tell Mueller this. Well, that wasn't true either. In other words, folks, not a word of this, not a single word of this breaking news story is or was true. In the next bite, they bring in Jim Sciutto, whose name was also on the story as a byline, and he, too, has now spread elements of this story on his own outside of this report that we have the soundbite for. He did so multiple times later, and everything that CNN said about this has been debunked. But here is the next bite with Sciutto.
Let's go first to CNN's Jim Sciutto, part of the team that broke this exclusive story. Jim is live in Washington. Jim, lay it out for us.
Good morning, John. Sources tell myself and Carl Bernstein that President Trump's longtime lawyer, Michael Cohen, is willing to tell the special counsel Robert Mueller that then candidate Trump knew in advance about his campaign's June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russians who were promising dirt on Hillary Clinton, and that the president approved of that meeting.
Do not doubt me. None of that's true. It did not happen. And the Washington Post and New York Times have now written stories saying so. They have retracted it. Well, I don't think there's been official retractions. They've run corrections. They've done their mea culpas. And now they're dumping all over Cohen. And remember, Lanny Davis let this live. Lanny Davis let this live for 3 weeks until he decided to tell media that he'd made a mistake and that Cohen had not said that, and Cohen had not seen this, and that Trump didn't know the meeting, that Lanny can't prove anything. I can't tell you the president knew of the meeting. I can't tell you that he approved the meeting because my source, I got it wrong. I made a mistake. Well, what happened was Cohen, when he testified before a congressional committee, did not say what CNN reports him saying when he's under oath. So he either lied to Lanny Davis or they both concocted some scheme story to end up raising money for Cohen. Remember, Lanny Davis goes out there and begs people to send money to Cohen's GoFundMe page so that Cohen can continue to tell the truth. As I keep asking, what does it cost anybody to tell truth? I guarantee you, if Michael Cohen wants to go on TV today, there'll be 15,000 cameras waiting for it. It won't cost him a dime. But Lanny Davis needs to get paid. He's a lawyer. He's working for which is another. What is a Clinton lawyer doing defending this guy? I mean, none of this passes the muster test. One more bite. Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald co-founded a website called The Intercept. He lives in Rio because he's become persona non grata in the American left, but he is an official card-carrying leftist progressive. He championed Edward Snowden. Snowden granted him all kinds of access after Snowden got caught or discovered to be leaking all kinds of NSA secrets. Greenwald used to have a regular guest appearance window on MSNBC, but they have banned him now because he publicly writes and states that he doesn't think there's anything at all to this Russian story. He doesn't think that there's any Russian collusion with Trump. He thinks it's all been a big waste of time, and so he's persona non grata. Here is Greenwald last night with Tucker Carlson on Fox News. Tucker asked him, what do you make of this? What do you make of CNN not retracting it, not correcting it?
I've been on your show to talk about a lot of these humiliating moments, and this might be one of the worst ones yet. After Lanny Davis went on CNN with Anderson Cooper, and to Anderson Cooper's shock, admitted that everything CNN had been breathlessly hyping is true, was actually false. The Washington Post and the New York Post listened to that, and they said, wait a minute, we independently confirmed CNN stories based on an anonymous source, and our anonymous source was Lanny Davis, who's now saying the whole thing is false. So they did what they had to do and what they should have done, which is they retracted the story. They outed their own source. CNN couldn't do that because they lied to the entire world. They can't retract the story, and they can't admit they lied, so they're just continuing to stick to what everybody knows is a lie.
And there is no other source but Lanny Davis. When the Washington Post, New York Post wanted to confirm it, they went to Lanny Davis. That was CNN's source. Lanny has told them he made it up. CNN is not withdrawing, not retracting the story. It is a humongous embarrassment. They can't withdraw it. And it's because, I'm telling you, folks, it's Bernstein. It's Bernstein. Protected. We have a guest coming up at the top of the next hour. Ann Coulter, her new book, Resistance is Futile. We'll be here for a while to discuss that and whatever else is happening out there and has crossed her mind, which, of course, is limitless. In the meantime, we're going to get started on the phones. And by the way, I'm serious. A real media would be camped outside Hillary's house and Obama's house and demanding to know what the hell was going on with the Chinese government having real-time hacked her computer, her homebrew server, while she was Secretary of State. A real media would be, and the fact that nobody is reacting to it and they're not out there denying this, they're not even breaking a sweat over it. But they will. In the meantime, Wausau, Wisconsin. Brian, you're first today. Great to have you with us, sir. Hi.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for 30 years of a free education. You couldn't possibly be more right if you were God himself. Us Trump supporters can't wait to get to the polls.
Yeah, I think this is going to shock. We shouldn't talk about this too loudly.
Oh, shh, quiet.
Well, because I've got evidence. I mean, I got sound bites. The drive-bys are to listening to this, but you realize I'm still being blamed for the fact that there's no Walter Cronkite in America today. It happened at another symposium recently. I get blamed because there's no media monopoly. So they occasionally listen, but I think, you're right. You're chomping at the bit. Do you know anybody that voted for Trump who is lackadaisical and hum-ho and is fed up, not thinking of voting in November?
No, sir, I do not. Everybody is aware, awake, and ready.
Why?
Why? Because we want to prove the media wrong. We want to support the president who's doing what he actually said during the campaign he would do. Now, he's not conventional, but he's getting the job done.
Speaking of getting the job done, there's a new Harris poll out there today. I first saw it referenced by Kellyanne Conway. And it is a survey of many things, including blue-collar work. Oh, folks, we have a new GDP number today, too. The economy grew 4.2% in the last month. Remember all of the experts claiming that 4.1% was just a one-off? It was an outlier. It didn't mean anything. Well, 4.1 has become 4.2. That looks like sustainable. But the Harris poll, 55 blue-collar workers thriving in the Trump economy. 55% say they are better off than 5 years ago. 85%, my life is heading in the right direction. 88% of parents, blue-collar parents, my kids are going to have a better future. These people know full well that this stuff stops the minute the Democrats get back in power. They are not going to stay home. Blue-collar, the little guy, Trump, apparently owns them. A brief time out here at the top of the busy broadcast hour. And when we get back, Ann Coulter and her new book, Resistance is Futile. Well, hang on. Much remains to be done, and we'll get to all of it today. And it's been a while, but we're happy to welcome back to the EIB Network the one and only Ann Coulter, who has a new book out. And it's a classic, as all of hers are. This was entitled Resistance is Futile. How are you doing, Ann? Great to have you back here with us.
So happy to be here, and thank you for the excellent title, but mine is a different kind of resistance.
Well, now, I was going to ask you about it. You know, Ann, I have to be honest. Sometimes, you run hot and cold on the people that you fervently endorse. Romney was a disappointment, for example. And I don't know, I haven't yet been able to determine where you're coming down with President Trump as we sit here today, but we'll find out.
Yes.
In due course. But resistance is futile. Now, you can take that any number of ways. Are you talking about the left-wing resistance? Resistance to Trump is futile? Or what resistance here?
Not the resistance to you, Rush, who are irresistible.
That's right. There isn't any.
There isn't any, exactly. No, this is the resistance that, shockingly, Hillary Clinton claimed to join a few months after the election. You know, in America, we refer to political opponents who lose as the loyal opposition. If Trump had lost the election and a few months afterwards announced that he was part of the resistance, people would say that's a military term. That's the French Revolution, the resistance to the Nazis. He's dog whistling to the militias. It's a message to the KKK, and imagine that then being accompanied by right-wing violence against Hillary supporters, as we have seen, enormous violence by Antifa and left-wing lunatics against Trump supporters. I think people would recognize we're in the middle of a fascist uprising and that it was absolutely irresponsible for a losing presidential candidate to announce that to be part of the resistance. It's actually pretty shocking that she did that.
Well, I remember, during the, I guess it was the last debate, and Chris Wallace, I think, asked Trump, because it had been, they've been buzzing about this. Mr. Trump, can you tell us, if you lose the election, will you concede? And Trump said, no, I'm not going to tell you that tonight. I'm not going to let you run a headline that I'm announcing I'm losing the election tonight.
Right.
I remember the reaction they had at conniption, and Trump is a threat to democracy. Trump's going to throw 200-plus years overboard. Now look.
Yes, and at the time I was a little testy with Chris Wallace for not asking the same question of Hillary. Boy, was I right. I guess he should have, since they aren't accepting the results of the election.
Okay, first chapter, the resistance. Trump is Hitler times infinity. So you're characterizing the left-wing resistance here and how they're reaching just the extreme degrees that you make it. How do they have any credibility, even with some of their Wacky support. None of it makes sense. None of what they're doing or saying makes any sense to anybody.
No, I know. The leftists have a mollusk's grasp of history, so they know Hitler bad, fascism bad. So what do we call Trump if we want to call him the worst thing we can think of? He's Hitler. He's like Hitler. And it's not just, the crazy social justice warriors and the Antifa and university professors out yelling this stuff. This has appeared in the pages of the New York Times in columns by David Brooks and a book by Madeleine Albright warning Republicans that this cult of personality. So then he gets an authoritarian personality. Then he gets into office, and it turns out he has the exact opposite of an authoritarian personality. He has a suck-up personality. I don't remember Joseph Stalin going around saying, oh, these people are incredible. They're fantastic people. Kim Jong-un, he just loves his people. I love these kids. He is, as many have said, Trump is like a couch cushion. He bears the impression of the last person who talks to him. He's doing many great things, but to describe him as having an authoritarian personality, or take the example of his not following an unconstitutional executive order of Obama's on DACA and his, as I refer to it, the Muslim ban. The three branches of government are, to use one of my favorite words, co-equal, because it means the same as equal. So the president has all of the powers of the executive branch in his hands. Some potty little district court judge in Hawaii is going to tell him no. I would love for some president someday to say, thanks for your opinion, Judge, but I took an oath to uphold the Constitution too. I have the authority as president given to me by the Constitution and by the law to exclude any immigrants in the interest of national security, which he has full authority to do, but he doesn't. No, Trump says, fine, we will appeal this. We will wait. We'll work its way through the court. So, it really is just them knowing that Hitler is supposed to be bad. They may as well call Trump a poopy head.
Well, I remember when this program started some 30 years ago, it was so uncool to refer to any political opponent as Hitler back then. It was lazy, so it was said to be intellectually lazy.
Yeah.
It's damaging. Nobody could be anywhere close to Hitler, much less worse. And now look, it's part of their retinue. It's part of their daily lexicon. Look at the. Look. You've been chronicling this for the left and their craziness for the longest time, and now the resistance. But is any of it working? Does any of it concern you?
Not really. The violence concerns me as anyone who's any Trump supporter has to worry about getting beaten up by going to a Trump rally or being thrown out of a restaurant. That's I admit a little irksome. But I think the resistance would be much better off if they'd read my book. I give them some tips on how they ought to be attacking Trump, which is to attack him on the worst thing he's actually done. And stop running off on wild, demented conspiracy theories that no one believes and screaming that he's Hitler.
Well, give me an example of something he's done that you think they could legitimately score some points with. They've tried accusing him of separating families at the border.
Right.
I've even had people on our side say, Rush, that's really bad. Those pictures are bad. Trump's got to do that. I said, he didn't do it.
Right.
He didn't do it. People respond to the media. It's amazing, even on our side, how sometimes it is easy for the media to start creating doubt. What? You're not going to be giving an interview, right?
If I were advising the Democrats, and don't worry, they're not going to listen to the excellent advice I am imparting to them. Look, Sherrod Brown is an old-style Democrat, senator from Ohio. He used to 100% agree with Trump on the trade deals. Jesse Jackson, Barbara Jordan, Harry Reid, Barbara Boxer, and Di-Fi used to all agree with Trump on the immigration issue. This is a new thing. The entire Democratic Party's philosophy and the left-wing philosophy is, where's Trump on that? Oh, that's awful. I think we could get the left to start defending pederasty if we told them that Trump was against it. But if they went back to their old-style Democratic politics, what you would attack Trump for is not really hopping to on all of those promises, like the wall. But they can't do it. They can't. Look at Molly Tibbetts last week. That if the Democratic Party were sane, that should be Trump's Kate Steinle. He's president. He's got a Republican House. He's got a Republican Senate. But don't worry, Democrats have blown it. They won't take advantage of it.
You think that? Do you believe, since you bring this up, you think there's going to be a blue wave? You think a Democrat's going to take the House?
Well, there will be, historically, the odds are overwhelming that there should be a blue wave. I think the resistance keeps bringing Trump's voters back. And if he really pushes on the popular issues he won the election on, immigration, trade, no more pointless wars, and gives a lot of rallies, I've been recommending that his staff just block off September and October and do nothing but Trump rallies. I keep seeing on MSNBC, I'm a hate watcher because I'm unusual that way. They keep claiming, oh, yeah, I don't think a Trump rally is going to help in my district. Oh, it's just going to turn off the suburban soccer moms. No. Do not take advice from MSNBC. Trump coming to town totally energizes the base. They spread out. It goes out in concentric circles. It's like listening to you, Rush. It spreads beyond the actual person listening to you. They tell their coworkers and their neighbors. So I think he can limit it. And luckily, we have a lot of seats to give up in the House. And it's very unlikely that the Democrats will take the Senate. We don't really have that many seats up.
Well, I think you're right about the rallies. Did I read the other day where they're blocking out as many as 4 days a week in September and October? Not every week, but some weeks. He's going to go out that many times.
He should definitely do that. That's brilliant. Because if we do lose the House, that is absolutely the end of hope.
How do you convey that message? You know, I was telling people today and yesterday, these the GDP numbers out today, 4.2%. Blue-collar workers survey, they're overwhelmingly in love with Trump. They have a renewed faith and so forth. The tax cuts, this economy is genuinely booming in ways that it hasn't in enough time, that some people have never lived through an economy booming like this. They've only lived through an America in decline. They've been told to get used to an America decline, that jobs are not coming back. Somehow Trump and his team have got to get the message out that if the Democrats win, this all ends.
Yeah.
Because the Democrats equal Venezuela. Maybe you don't want to say that. That's maybe too extreme. But the Democrats are going to bring all this to a screeching halt on purpose.
Oh, yes, that's absolutely right. One of the wonderful things about Trump, I mean, he does get the message out, and as I say in the last chapter, we may not get the wall out of him, but I do think the way he raises issues on Twitter, I completely disagree with the cliche you hear all the time on TV. Oh, he tweets too much. No, I love his tweeting. I want him to be the official communicator for the Republican Party.
Wait a minute. Now, my memory could be failing me, but I thought, speaking of the wall, I thought there was a period of time, and maybe 2 months ago, that you had really gotten down on Trump and were openly saying so. It seemed like you'd lost some faith, and it was about the wall, it was about immigration, but you don't sound like that today.
Well, I've been giving him tough love on the wall since the day after the election. No, I assume you and everyone remembers election night. I remember it very distinctly. And I thought, after Adios America and In Trump We Trust, it's finally happened. We have a shot to save America. My work is done. I'm just going to kick back. I'll hang out with Rush Limbaugh in Palm Beach. I'll have cocktails and enjoy myself. No, it turns out this presidency is more of a transactional presidency. He does have to be swatted on the nose with a rolled-up newspaper when he goes astray. But remember, he used to do that all the time during the campaign. Remember during that debate when he was worse on H-1B visas than Marco Rubio, and all of Twitter explodes? He has to come out with a clarification and retraction a few hours after the debate. So we do have to keep our eyes on him, but it would have been the end of hope if Hillary had been elected.
Oh, my God. Look, there's nobody that outworks him. There's nobody who can keep up with him energy-wise, and he has stayed true to every promise that he's made, at least in terms of effort and in terms of accomplishing them more than any president in recent memory, and he's undeterred. I have to take a break, but I want you to speak to his psychology. You know him pretty well. I don't know of any other elected official in this country, Republican especially, who could withstand an average week that Donald Trump gets and still remain focused and positive and upbeat and basically, we know it bothers him. You know him, and we know it bothers him, but it doesn't deter him. And he's it. And I think this is what his voters get. Without him, what they want dies. And they're going to support, they're not going to let any Access Hollywood video take him out. They're not going to let any of these usual ways the media destroys Republicans. They're not going to let them succeed. They're going to defend him to no end. But anyway, let me take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll continue with Ann Coulter and her new book, Resistance is Futile. After this, with Ann Coulter, brand new, hot off the press, Resistance is Futile, New York Times and every other list bestseller. Look, we already discussed your opinion of Trump and your assessment where he is, and in the limited time we've got here, you claim, and everybody's trying to find out, what is the actual genesis, the beginning of this Russian collusion story? When did it actually, what triggered it? The House committees have been investigating it. They think the FBI is shielding documents on when this really began. You've searched the record, and what do you think about it? Where did it begin? When did it begin? Who's behind it?
Well, you already know that it was Hillary Clinton. You've cited Shattered, the book, where they talk about coming up with it after the election. What I think is fun about my book, there are a few three important historical notes. For one thing, Democrats, as you know, always claim we was robbed when they lose an election, unless it's a landslide like Reagan in 1984. But Reagan in 1980, there was a huge conspiracy about how Reagan had sent Bush and other emissaries to Iran and asked them to hold the hostages until after the election. That actually appeared on 2/3 of the New York Times op-ed page, that insane, bonkers conspiracy theory. They always say it took the deft touch of the Clintons to have one of these conspiracy theories go on and on and on and consume the entire country. The other interesting thing, because I don't have a job and can spend all day reading Nexus, is when it was first launched, the Russia conspiracy theory, it was by Robbie Mook, Hillary's campaign manager, on the eve of the Democratic National Convention. Why? Because the WikiLeaks documents had just gone up. And this is what Hillary always does. When she's caught in the middle of a scandal, she finds some apocryphal enemy to blame. She blamed some man in Arkansas for hating her husband after losing to him, Sheffield Nelson for Jennifer Flowers. There was the vast right-wing conspiracy for Monica. She blamed the sexism of the media for her loss to Obama in 2008. So there are always mysterious dark forces conspiring against her when she's caught in a scandal. Third, and I think an hilarious part of the book that can really only be shown in a book, it's sort of a visual thing, is that at the time, the entire mainstream media responded to Robbie Mook's interview with George Stephanopoulos on the eve of the Democratic National Convention, claiming that experts were telling him, that Russia had hacked the DNC and passed it to WikiLeaks in an effort to help Trump. Okay, the New York Times, the LA Times, even the New York Daily News laughed at this. They basically all saw it as the craziest John Bircher conspiracy that even the John Birchers wouldn't have come up with. And as the New York Times and the LA Times and the rest of them said, you're launching this theory on the basis of unnamed experts. Basically, the media did not take it seriously. Even when Hillary brought it up in the debates, the New York Times sort of protected her by mentioning it on page A14. It was not until disaster struck and Hillary lost the election that the media goes looking through the record and what explains this? What could it be? It can't be that Trump was running on popular ideas or there was anything wrong with our love Hillary Clinton. That's when they started pushing it as the exact same reporters, the exact same newspapers suddenly started pushing it as a serious theory. All right, now, just a couple minutes here. I want to know what you think of the special counsel investigation, where it's going, how long it's going to go on, and what the ultimate resolution to it's going to be. Well, it's utterly outrageous. We only have a special counsel because of the false insinuations of James Comey that President Trump was under investigation. Of course Trump was frustrated. He's trying to run the country here, and the head of the FBI, I have the quotes from the hearings, it's just outrageous the way Comey was implying Trump was under investigation. Bam, we get the special counsel. And 2 months later, Comey admits, yeah, he was never under investigation. Not only that, but when we found out the FBI was spying on the Trump campaign, remember their response was, we weren't spying, we were trying to protect Trump.
Exactly. Okay, 1 minute. Where's it going? How's it end?
Perhaps, I think it's probably useful to. I mean, Trump has full authority to fire Mueller, to throw off the investigation. I think he can probably use it. It's so crazy that it's so far off. I think it's helping Trump.
Yeah, it's you don't sound worried about any of these things, these irons in the fire that the Democrats have to literally destroy him. I mean, they're not going to stop. They're going to give everything they've got, but it's encouraging because you go up and down, optimism, pessimism. It's encouraging to hear that you don't seem to be that worried about all this in the long term. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. Everything the left hates about Trump is what I love about him. I loved his response to Charlottesville. I love him this week attacking the social media, the big tech firms for censorship. I love him going after the media and calling them fake news. It's exactly what I think the base loves about him. We finally have a Republican who fights back.
Excellent. Perfect timing. EIB Network and El Rushmore meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Thank you to Ann Coulter. New book, Resistance is Futile. It came out August the 20th. It's been just a little bit over a week. And Ann Coulter, it needs to be said, remains the fearless warrior that she's always been. She will go anywhere and debate any of them anytime without any fear whatsoever. That hasn't changed. She has always been courageous, and part of her modus operandi has been to descend into the belly of the leftist beast, primarily on college campuses, but anywhere else too. And she continues to fight the good cause. So thank her again for time here. We are not quite finished with the CNN Carl Bernstein story. We move on to other things, get back to your phone calls. Now, where we left off here, we had played the audio sound bites of CNN having their orgasm back on July 27th with breaking news, proof that Trump had colluded, an anonymous source claiming that Trump knew of the Russian meeting in Trump Tower and approved of it. The source for that was Lanny Davis. CNN runs the story. The Washington Post and the New York Post say, wait a minute, what is this? They independently try to confirm it. They call Lanny Davis. Lanny Davis confirms it for them. CNN does not identify Lanny Davis as their source. So Lanny Davis is the only source, anonymous, for this story that Cohen has the goods on Trump and can't wait to tell Mueller about it. Then a month goes by, 3 weeks to a month, and Lanny learns that his client is telling a different story under oath before congressional committees. But enough time passes that the fundraising campaign for Cohen, GoFundMe, can get sufficient money in their $400,000, much of which will go to Lanny, we presume. So Lanny then comes clean and tells the Washington Post and the New York Post that he made a mistake, that none of what he told them was actually true. Well, since he's the source for CNN, he told them the same thing, but CNN has not retracted. The New York Post, the Washington Post have. CNN continues to live by the story, claiming they have other sources, but they won't identify. Nobody knows who it is. But none of the other news outlets can find another source to confirm what Lanny said. We now know it's not true because Lanny admitted that he made it up. And Lanny has admitted that Cohen made it up. So CNN continues to hang on a lie. They continue to stand behind a lie. Have a story, the style section of the Washington Post, the headline, a journalist of Watergate fame faces questions about a blockbuster Trump piece. Well, that would be Bernstein, who used to work at the Washington Post. What kind of headline is this? A journalist of Watergate fame faces questions about a blockbuster Trump piece. It's Bob. It's Bernstein, of Woodward and Bernstein fame, and they go on to identify him in the story. John Nolte at Breitbart. CNN's Jeff Zucker claims another soul, Carl Bernstein's. Imagine for just a moment you are Carl Bernstein. Here you sit, 74-year-old living legend, co-credited with uncovering the story of Nixon's corrupt White House. You've made it this far. You've made it another 45 years without sullying your image, without pulling a Dan Rather, and then you're caught lying, flat out, straight up lying about the Trump Tower meeting. And it's worse than that. Bernstein, on numerous occasions, claimed that this entire Russian collusion story was worse than Watergate. Back on August 22nd, 1 week ago today, Carl Bernstein, talking to CNN's John Berman about how the Manafort and Cohen cases will impact the Trump presidency, saying that it is worse than Watergate, a line that he repeated on August 3rd, July 26, January 29. He's been living off that for all of this time. We're going to go back to the audio sound bites, number 24. This is the same day, well, 2 days later, July 29th, 2 days after CNN's scoop. He appeared on Reliable Sources on Sunday with little Brian Stelter as the host. And Brian said, your byline graced all the graced. Oh, yes. Carl Bernstein's byline graced. It didn't appear. No. When Carl Bernstein's name appears above a story, the space is graced. Yes, your byline graced all the stories about Watergate 45 years ago. Your byline is back on the scoop about Cohen and Trump, who claims that Trump knew in advance about that pivotal Trump Tower meeting. How did you do it, Mr. Bernstein? Little Brian setting up. How'd you do it, Carl? How did you do it again? Oh, my God, Carl, you took down Nixon, and here you're back 45 years later. Oh, my God, you're on the verge of taking down Trump. How did you do it, Carl?
I talked to sources, as did Jim Sciutto, and it became very apparent that the former attorney to the President of the United States was going around and telling people that the famous Trump Tower meeting, which indeed was convened for the purpose of collusion. Cohen was saying that Donald Trump, the candidate for President of the United States at the time, had authorized the go-ahead for that meeting to take place with his son. And I said, this is news, as did CNN. So like in Watergate, you have a very serious news organization, CNN, in Watergate, the Washington Post, making judgments about what is news.
And I said, this is news. And so did CNN. I said, this is news. And today, everybody that told Carl Bernstein what he breathlessly reported has retracted it. Lanny Davis has retracted it, said that Cohen doesn't have any idea whether Trump knew in advance of the meeting. And they're out there reporting Trump lied, but nobody has any evidence. Lanny has withdrawn his. Cohen has withdrawn his evidence. Cohen has said he no longer wants to talk to Mueller. He doesn't have anything to tell Mueller. But Carl Bernstein is still out there. His head's in the guillotine. His head is in the figurative guillotine here, folks. And the only reason CNN is not retracting the story is, can you imagine? Can you imagine if CNN actually had to retract this story that's got Carl Bernstein's byline gracing it? You imagine what that would do to the legacy and to the reputation of the Watergate journalist who brought down Richard Nixon. This is why they're hanging on. Okay, mentioned earlier that I, your host, am again being blamed for destroying the old media monopoly. Now, by the way, they're right about this. I don't take this criticism as unjust or unfair. They're absolutely right about it. And, you know, when they begin talking about it, they do. When you get them speaking honestly, they do say this. This is why I and this program have always been a target. In 1988, when this program started, there were the three networks and CNN, the newspapers, and that was it. This program was the first national conservative media program. Outside of some magazines, William F. Buckley's firing line on PBS, this program was it. Literally, CNN had not been on the air that long. It was the three networks, and they owned it. They had a monopoly on what was reported, what wasn't reported, what the commentary on what was reported was. So now we head to, let's see here, yesterday afternoon, headline news across America. Carol Costello is talking to Douglas Brinkley. He's back. Rice University history professor and official scholar of the presidency. They're discussing John McCain and the lack of bipartisanship in our nation's capital.
Americans are much more alike than they are different. And when we talk about the extremes, I don't think that's the majority of Americans. I still believe most Americans are moderate, and they don't have like a defined set of ideology each. Like, we're human beings.
We think a lot about
it. Right. So why doesn't that play out in our politics?
Because we now have a media that people choose. One could listen to Rush Limbaugh or Fox News. One can go MSNBC or a more liberal NPR programming. There isn't a Walter Cronkite figure that everybody's tuning in on to get the same news in the evenings, and so it creates some disharmony.
Isn't it fascinating that that's their fix? You know, Obama dreamed about this too. He commented on this a number of times. We used to have common values. Everybody watched the same news every night. Everybody got the same facts and the same news. And it's the same. We don't have that anymore. Oh, they would love to go back to those days. Here's John Meekum. He's the former editor at Newsweek and wherever they'll take him in the liberal media. This was this morning in Washington. The White House Historical Association held a forum on the president's and the press during a discussion of the evolution of opinion-driven media. Presidential historian John Meekum said,
1921, radio comes along, television in the late 40s. There's something called the Fairness Doctrine.
Here we go.
We all own the public airways. So the idea was you could not express an opinion unless you gave equal time to both sides.
Not
so
true.
Most people decided to stay out of that business altogether.
It's not true.
And as part of a generalized deregulation move, President Reagan repealed that in the 80s. That's 86, 87. Rush Limbaugh goes national in 1988. By 1992, he's so important that his support of Pat Buchanan helps bring George H.W. Bush down in the 92 New Hampshire primary. 96, you have Fox, MSNBC. CNN was founded in 80, of course, but it began its move. And so you had this period where we did have more or less the kind of, and part of it also is that that's the media world in which most of us grew up.
Right.
We're accustomed to this idea of Cronkite and the New York Times, and there was a conversation.
Right, we need desperately to get back to these people mischaracterize the Fairness Doctrine every time they talk about it. The Fairness Doctrine is not equal time. Equal time is a separate doctrine. It's a separate theory or a separate regulation. And it applies in campaigns. But the Fairness Doctrine, let me briefly tell you what it is. When it was in play, it did. I worked in KFBK in Sacramento doing this show under the Fairness Doctrine. It didn't stop me. It didn't stop the management of KFBK. We had people that discussed carrot cake recipes at the holidays. We had people discussing local sewage problems. We covered debate. I happen to be the only one talking about politics, but there was no limit, and we lived under the Fairness Doctrine. The way it worked was, if I said something on the air that somebody in the community disagreed with, we invited them in and would put them on the program. They didn't get equal time. They got to appear. If I wanted to have them on for 10 minutes or 15, that's what we did. But even that was not a requirement. The Fairness Doctrine was simply something that said there has to be an attempt at balance. But how you define balance is up to you. But Fairness Doctrine balance has never said that if you do 3 hours of conservatism, you got to follow it with 3 hours of liberalism. It's never been that. So if you, as a radio station, you do 3 hours of conservatism Maybe Sunday morning you do 3 hours of liberal. Bam, you're balanced. If you do 10 hours a week of something, as long as you do an appreciable amount of time during the week doing something else, you're balanced. It's not equal time, and it doesn't grant opponents automatic access. These people don't even know what the fairness doctrine is. All they think they know, is that when it was repealed was when I finally had a chance to blossom. What they don't know is I worked in Sacramento doing this exact show, for all intents and purposes, for 3 years under the fairness doctrine. It was not a limitation in any way, shape, manner, or form. Anyway, I got to take a break. We'll be back. We'll continue after this. Thank you, all of you on hold, for your patience. Time now to get back to the phones. This is Paul in Albany. Welcome, sir. Great to have you here.
Hey, Russ. Thanks for 30 years. It's been great.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. You were talking the first hour about the media and how they are really kind of peeing off the base here and encouraging them to vote. And I think you are hitting the nail on the head. And if they really wanted to lull us into a false sense of security and keep us at home, which we have proven in the past that we know how to do, they would tell the truth about Trump and his successes. But I don't think they could ever bring themselves to do that. With 70 days to go to this midterm election, they're not going to change their tactics now. So, for them, but I think we are energized.
It actually, it's an excellent point. It's interesting to me, the study the psychology of this. Because here you have the entirety of the drive-by or mainstream media. And what I've always said, if you miss NBC, no biggie, turn on CBS. And if you miss that, you still got time, turn on CBS. If you miss that, turn on CNN. And if you miss that, read the New York Times. If you miss that, read the Washington Post. And just go on down the list. It's all the same. No matter who's writing, no matter who's opining, it's all the same. And they are unified on opinion, and their reporting on Donald Trump is likewise unified. And it is filled with predictable elements: hate, rage, anger, extremism, lies, distortions. And it's interesting to me that they live in such a bubble that they do not apparently have the slightest bit of concern that all of that extremism and lying and unfairness and unbalance and all of the viciousness to Trump is not going to have any impact on his voters. Common sense should tell them that they are keeping Trump's voters revved up, that they are keeping them engaged, but they don't think that. They think that they are depressing you. They think that they are dispiriting you. They think that their constant haranguing, their never-ending distortions, their outright hatred for Trump will prove to you that you can't beat them, that you can't overpower them. No matter what good news is out there, they can ruin it for you. They hope to depress you and keep you from the polls. They haven't the slightest idea how what they're doing is actually affecting people, even though they have the evidence of 2016, but they don't even consult. Email question. Mr. Limbaugh, do you think there really is that many transgender people out there as the media seems to indicate? No. Tell you why we get back. Back to the fastest 3 hours in media, otherwise known as the Rush Limbaugh program, the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. As usual, talent on loan from God. Another email. Mr. Limbaugh, why have you not talked about Don McGahn leaving the White House? Because, folks, in the big scheme of things, it doesn't mean much. I mean, I'll get to it, but I'm going to put it in the priority list. Okay, so McGahn's leaving the White House. He's going to leave after Kavanaugh gets confirmed to the Supreme Court. He has been with Trump from the beginning. He's the guy in the Trump's legal counsel office that spent 30 hours talking to Robert Mueller. I don't think there's nothing to see here. The media is trying to make this into some gigantic, important falling apart unraveling of the Trump legal apparatus, and that's not what this means. You know, these people get caught up in all of the things. If they can portray this as Trump unraveling or falling apart, they will, and it's not what it means at all. I'm just not going to get sidetracked by it. And there's another thing I got to point out. You know, go back to this John Meekum soundbite, a presidential historian, talking about how it was the lifting of the Fairness Doctrine that finally destroyed the monopoly that the mainstream media had. We don't any longer have a Walter Cronkite. Well, we could, and it could be me. I mean, people would learn more on this program about both sides of every issue than anywhere else they could go in media. But anyway, I want you to observe something. I want to point something out. Notice that back in the good old days, it was the three networks and the big newspapers, and that was it. And the Fairness Doctrine was in play. What did it mean? The Fairness Doctrine meant that we didn't have to hear from conservatism. The Fairness Doctrine meant that we wouldn't have, this is by their own admission, the Fairness Doctrine meant we wouldn't have to put up with Rush Limbaugh types. The Fairness Doctrine meant that there couldn't be any opposition to us. So what the hell was fair about it? This whole Fairness Doctrine thing, they use as a crutch, claiming that it was the last trick that Reagan played on everybody. Reagan lifted the Fairness Doctrine when he heard about me and set me up to become what has happened here. And if Reagan hadn't done that, then this show wouldn't have happened. I can tell you unequivocally that that isn't true. The Fairness Doctrine has never been an obstacle in any aspect of my career at any time. What's fascinating about it is that during the golden age of media, when there was no conservative opposition in the media and we had a Fairness Doctrine, how could it possibly have been a Fairness Doctrine if they were able to use it to silence any media opposition? I find it fascinating. The Fairness Doctrine somehow protected them, and yet when it was lifted, it opened things up. The Fairness Doctrine, in their telling, is what makes things fair, but it wasn't. It didn't help anybody oppose them. So it's even entirely misnamed. Now, this other email question I got, it's not the only time, but I got another one today. I have several of these over the course of months, weeks. And they go something along the lines of, I'm seeing so much news about transgenderism. Are there that many transgenders in America, Rush? Well, the answer is no. I mean, statistically, factually, equivocally, no. There aren't, the transgender percentage of the population is infinitesimal, but that's not why they get reported. They get news coverage the same reason NFL players kneeling during the flag get coverage. Any group of people that can successfully portray themselves as a victim of majority America, meaning white, male-dominated America, is going to be given hero status. Any group of people, any victim group of people opposing America is going to get fawning treatment from the media. When it comes to transgenderism, I actually think that much of it is almost like a fad for young people. The media portrays it as cool. Media portrays transgenderism as a hip, young, demographic, political issue as well as lifestyle issue. So it's a way to call attention to yourself. It's a way to tick off your parents. It's built in. I just think a lot of it is just young people engaging in a fad or what have you. And no, I'm not trying to be critical of fellow human beings. I'm simply answering questions that people pose to me here. Now, I'll go back to the red wave and blue wave business. Again, if you weren't here during the first hour, we talked about the governor's races, the primaries in both Florida and in Arizona. And in both states, Republican turnout dwarfed Democrat turnout. Not supposed to be the case. We're supposed to be at the very beginning here of a blue wave. Democrat voter enthusiasm is supposed to be uncontainable. Democrat voters are just so chomping at the bit that they can't be held back. If the election were today, they'd be out there in droves, ready to set turnout records. People can't wait. They hate Trump so much. So many people have voted for Trump feel bad they did. They can't wait to correct their mistake, blah, 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 blah. And yet here come these elections, and the turnout story is entirely different. In Florida, 124,000 more Republican votes in the governor primary than Democrat votes. In Arizona, 100,000 more. How do you get a blue wave out of that? So let's go to the audio sound bites. Eamon Javers is a Washington correspondent of CNBC, and he was on Squawk Box on CNBC this morning, and the co-host Becky Quick is talking to Eamon Javers about last night's results in Florida. Question, when you see the polls getting it wrong all over again, by the way, have you seen the media reference that? They're being set up and let down again by their own. Why did Hillary lose? I've always maintained that one of the big problems the Democrats had in 2016, and they had a lot, they believe their polls. I think their own media sunk them. I think their own polling units and their own expert polling scientific analysts made them think they couldn't lose. Why else would Hillary not go to a bunch of states unless she physically was unable to, which may be true? They thought they had it in the bag. They thought it was landslide. Trump didn't even have a 10% chance of winning. You remember all that. And I think that Hillary and her camp believed it. Why wouldn't they believe their own buddies in the media? And it's happening again. The polling data is almost an exact replica of 2016. And so Eamon Javers here is being asked to explain this.
Polling has gotten a little bit hairy here. We don't quite have full transparency into what's going on with voters. In this case, Gillum didn't lead in any national polls going into this race. So the question is, what were the pollsters actually capturing going into the race? You're seeing a surge in turnout, so you're seeing a lot of people showing up to vote who pollsters might not have expected show up to vote. And so that tilts everything. The other thing is just the rise of cell phones and how hard it is for people to be contacted these days. People don't answer their home phones, and a lot of people simply don't talk to pollsters who call them at night.
It's the cell phone excuse. Damn it, I forgot. It's the cell phone excuse. They can't find you because there isn't a white pages for cell phone numbers. I forgot. That's the excuse. They can't reach you. What a bunch of bohunk. Every scammer in the world can find your cell phone number, but pollsters can't. It's a fallback excuse. The guy said it right here. You're seeing a surge in turnout. You're seeing a lot of people showing up to vote. Pollsters might not have expected to show. Who might they be? I think he's talking about Republicans. He didn't say that. But the drive-bys don't. They really think that you're fat, dumb, and happy, or satisfied, or lackadaisical, or you think you've already won it. You're too dumb and stupid to know that your president still needs your vote. That's it. You're too unsophisticated, too stupid to know that your party needs your votes again. You're just going to sit back and let the Democrats and these insane lunatic socialists take back your country. It doesn't make any sense. Unless you believe in ages-old conventional wisdom, formula, and theory about off-year elections, which they obviously do. And Eamon Javers was not finished. He suggests, you know what? There could even be a red wave out here, Becky.
Right. The other factor is that people just not telling the pollsters the truth, right? Some people won't say exactly who they're voting for, or will suggest they're going to vote for somebody and then turn around and vote for somebody else because they feel that that's the appropriate answer to give the pollster. And then in their heart of hearts, they want to vote another way. And so all of that creates a cloudy picture going into November. You know, there's all this talk of, is there a blue wave? Is there a red wave? And I don't think we really know.
She said, yeah, it's probably hard to figure out. And Eamon Javers, I don't think we really know. After all of this time, we don't really know. Well, now, how much ontological certitude have these people had for for the past number of months reporting on the blue wave. Been a fait accompli, has it not? Now all of a sudden, I'm going to tell you, when they saw those turnout numbers in the gubernatorial primary, Florida and Arizona, I guarantee they were choking on whatever they were chewing or drinking. I mean, folks, they believe their own PR. They believe their own drivel. They believe their own polling data. They believe that they have succeeded in rallying this Democrat base. They believe that Democrat and anti-Trump haters cannot wait to get out and vote. And they believe that there are millions and millions and millions more of them than there are Trump voters. They believe it. They're not curious enough to challenge themselves. So when they saw these turnout numbers, panic, anger, disbelief, what have you, Mr. Newt weighing in on all this, Fox and Friends today, Brian Kilmeade. Interesting matchup in Florida, Mr. Newt. The gubernatorial race going to be Bernie Sanders against Donald Trump using surrogates. Do you think that's a way to look at it?
Florida, when people start talking about a blue wave, you ought to point out to them, Florida is likely to be a desert island for the Democrats with no wave at all, given these kind of outcomes. And by the way, in Arizona, President Trump was very gracious and supportive of Congresswoman McSally. She was the first woman to fly in combat and has a remarkable record. I think she's going to win the Senate race there. And again, this so-called blue wave is going to disappear in the sand. And I think you're going to see, if anything, more of a red wave by the time we get to November than a blue wave.
Mr. Newt making it official, going out there on the sand, claiming a red wave. Now, this Florida governor's race, Ron DeSantis, again, just to review, DeSantis was double digits down against Putnam. And then Trump comes to Tampa, does a rally for DeSantis, with DeSantis there. DeSantis has some pretty cool TV ads that have been running in Florida, if I must say so myself. And Putnam's are not bad. He's a good guy as well. But DeSantis ends up winning in double digits. So you got a Republican president, Donald Trump, takes DeSantis down double digits to victory in double digits. Is there any Republican that could have done that? Now, 10 years ago, could John McCain have done it? Could Obama do it on the Democrat side? There's no way. Obama's an albatross around Democrat candidates that he endorsed, as was Bill Clinton. So now they're setting it. Okay, so now it's Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders. It's Donald Trump versus George Soros. Is that how you see the Florida governor's race? This is another thing they do. It's not Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders. It's Ron DeSantis versus this Cullum guy, Andrew Cullum. And Andrew Cullum is promising to go the direction of Venezuela. He's promising to impeach Trump. He's promising to roll back tax cuts. He's promising Medicare for all. He's promising all these leftist socialist things. Now, you might want to say it's Bernie Sanders' ideology versus Trump's, but it isn't. It's the demonstrable, abject failure of socialism versus the conservatism of the American founding. That's what the election is. It's DeSantis versus Cullum. But note, they have to try to dress this all up. And by putting Bernie's name in there instead of the candidates, they're trying to rely on the popularity of Crazy Bernie to draw out young people to vote for Cullum. They play tricks like that. Anyway, I got to take a break. We'll be back right now. Shepherdsville, Kentucky. This is Bill. Thank you for calling. Sir, how are you?
Thank you. Oh, fine. Great. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I've been listening to you this morning talking about the, how the news media is going to keep people interested in by, putting out the propaganda they put out. I want to tell you, I'm just pissed completely. Over the years, I am an AFL-CIO member, industrial electrician, 33 years. And all I've heard out of my Democratic buddies was how great the Democrats were for us. And then we got this 1% was the new get used to it growth rubbed into our face. In my line of work, I watched all these factories closing, and our work was dwindling. Unionism has dwindled down to nothing. And the Democrats have pissed me off, regardless of what the crap the news media puts out. The Democratic Party has made me so mad I can't see straight. I'm through with them.
How long have you been a Democrat? Before they ticked you off, how long were you a voting Democrat?
At least 30 years.
Ho! 30 years, and they pissed you off enough that you are through with them.
I'm through with them. I'm through with their lies. I mean, it's just constant. They fed us a line of propaganda, and none of it. They turned their back on the working man, and for some reason they want to go back to that. And when I heard Obama talking about get used to that 1% growth, that was it. And there were other things involved there too, but that one really just
get used to the 1%. And when your mom gets close to dying, give her a pill. That's the best we can do for her. All this stuff with America in decline. What good would that do you?
It didn't do me. It wouldn't do me any good. This guy we have as a president right now, in my opinion, is the George Patton of politics. He is exactly what we need. We need some arrogance in there. We need a guy who's going to do the job and tell us what, and set us in the right direction and get the job done. And that is our present president. And I'm glad that we have him, and I'll be there. And I can't wait till November. I'll be voting for anybody that's for him.
Right on.
That's straight Republican.
Right on. That's Bill in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. Bill, there's a new Harris poll out today of blue-collar people. And it is over the top positive for Trump in terms of people and their feelings about the future for their kids. 85% feel great about it. 55% say they're doing better than they have in many, many years. And they chalk it all up to Donald Trump. It's and he's blue-collar electrician. He's a testament to it. This is the kind of people the media is missing. This is the kind of people the media used to take for granted as just count on them Democrat voters. Blue-collar, union. That meant they hate Republicans. It meant they hate companies. They hate CEOs, hate corporations. The Democrats are out there looking out for the little guy. Took his union dues, gave it to the Democrat Party to run campaigns and so forth. And then, as he said, here came Barack Obama. I don't know what you think we're going to do to bring those jobs back, but our job now is to retrain you for new work because those jobs are not coming back. And anybody tells you that this economy growth 3%, they're lying to you. Not in the current moment with world economics and climate change the way it is. And it's not what people want to hear. So Trump comes along and promises a better day on the basis that America can do it again, and is now bringing it off. People are noting, but this guy, Bill in Shepherdsville, this is the exact kind of guy the Democrats used to count on so religiously they took him for granted. Until November of 2011. I'll never forget this piece by Thomas Edsall in the Washington Post announcing that the Obama re-election strategy 2012 was to write off white working families in America and instead build the base on the strength of all of these minority coalitions added together. Back in just a sec. Welcome back. El Rushball with Half My Brain, where it always is. Half of it tied behind my back to make it fair. And like many industries out there, the cybersecurity industry has its insiders. Speaking of which, I'm not going to get to it in depth today, but I was reading my tech blogs, which is what I do to get away from all this. And I can't anymore. The tech blogs are becoming so politicized. Tech blogs, I was reading one of them last night. Guess what? Bad actors like Russia are more deeply involved in our elections than anybody ever knew. And these young little bloggers breathlessly report this stuff. And it doesn't take it. All it takes is some wacko outfit nobody's ever heard of reporting a study just completed. State actors deeply, deeply embedded in America's election systems worse than anybody suspected. So the readers of these blogs are getting all hepped up, fired up, and so forth. And there hasn't been one election that's even come close to being affected by any of this. I just cringe when I think of the damage to the integrity and the honor of our electoral system that the Obama administration has done. The leadership people, the FBI involved in this Get Trump scheme, Mueller, all of these people, it's immeasurable, the damage that they have done. I don't know how we recover from it. I mean, every now going into the midterms, they're already tainted. And all of these unquestioning little left-wing young kid sponges just soak it all up and never even question it. They don't challenge it. They just absorb it and believe it like they do all the other left-wing wacko claims. Net neutrality, climate change, all of that. Anyway, cybersecurity industry has its insiders. They have elites like any other group does. The exchange of information among that group is happening all the time, particularly when one of them identifies a legitimate threat that could affect many others. These insiders share information on cyber crimes committed, cyber crimes attempted. One is recent, took place in different parts of Europe. Attackers hacked into a bank's ATM system. They stole a massive amount of user information. They passed it along to a larger group of free agents who then began simultaneously withdrawing massive amounts of money while the mastermind shielded the bank from knowing what was going on. And if you have a bank, you got a bunch of ATMs, people withdrawing money from them all the time. When that happens, it's normal. Nobody stops to notice it. These thieves, except this occasion, were stealing in mass withdrawals, and the bank didn't know. They referred to this as the ATM cash out. There's no shortage of threats like this in today's online connected world. One weak link is all it takes for one of these cyber thieves to score big time. It's why having LifeLock identity theft protection is so important and becoming more so each day. They have to do the looking out for you. They have to look for evidence that your identity's fallen into the wrong hands, and they do. That's exactly what they do. And when they suspect it may have happened is when you hear from them. Their newest protection plan now adds the power of Norton security software on your computers to help you protect against threats to your devices like ransomware and other forms of malware. No one can stop every cyber threat, and certainly nobody can prevent all identity theft. But I'm telling you, again and again and again, LifeLock is in a league of its own. Nobody can touch them in their comprehensive thoroughness in protecting their clients. Go to LifeLock.com or call them 800-440-4833. Use my name as the promo code to get you 10% off. LifeLock, 800-440-4833. There is a controversy that has erupted in the aftermath of the Florida gubernatorial primary. You have Andrew Cullum, the leftist Democrat, first African-American to win the Democrat Party nomination for governor. And he's pretty much, he's like an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He is a solid Bernie Sanders, George Soros leftist. And in his mind, America is the problem in the world, rooted in its unfairness, its discrimination, and so forth and so on. And he is hell-bent on turning this country into socialism, despite the evidence that people die every day in socialism. It's mind-boggling to me, but he's into it. Ron DeSantis is the Republican who won the primary, thanks to the support of Donald Trump. And DeSantis, this morning on America's Newsroom on Fox, being interviewed by Sandra Smith. And the question was, how do you plan to beat Mr. Cullum?
We've got to work hard to make sure that we continue Florida going in a good direction. Let's build off the success we've had on Governor Scott. The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up by trying to embrace a socialist agenda with huge tax increases and bankrupting the state. That is not going to work. That's not going to be good for Florida.
Okay, now you can imagine what the drive-by media has been doing with this all day. Andrew Cullum is African-American. Ron DeSantis said, let's build off the success we've had with Governor Scott. The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up. Now, the drive-bys in very simpleton, predictable, discriminatory form are now claiming that DeSantis is engaging in the utilization of racist dog whistles. And by using the term monkeying around, that DeSantis is signaling his friends in the white supremacist movement to make sure they come out and vote. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You drive-bys can keep this up, and you're just going to cause another backlash, much like you did after the Access Hollywood video, when you think airing that video is going to destroy Trump. People are fed up with it. Everybody in the world knows what DeSantis meant here. Ron DeSantis has never uttered a racist word, thought, or whatever in public that anybody's ever heard. It's not who he is. It's not what he's become, and everybody knows it. And yet here comes the media, and they're going to, it's so lazy. It's so simpleton. To them, every Republican at some point becomes one of these white supremacist racists. They're just waiting for the right time when some Republican proves it. I, for one, am sick and tired of this kind of discrimination, this kind of prejudice that the American left, the Democrat Party, and the media live and die for each and every day. All Ron DeSantis meant was we got to stop fooling around. The last thing we need to do is screw this up. We just won the primary. We've now got to go win the general. The last thing we should do is screw this up. The idea that he used the term monkey. You know what this is like? There was a journalist, a TV journalist, a play-by-play guy or an analyst, I forget which, doing tennis coverage, the Australian Open. And I think it was the women's semifinals or finals, and Serena Williams was in the match. And this ESPN guy applauded her for her gorilla-like tactics. He's gone. It didn't take 30 seconds for the worldwide left to erupt and claim that he was referring to her as a gorilla. Well, you know, there are two spellings for the word. G-O-R-I-L-L-A is the way you spell the word when you're talking about Jane Goodall and her buddies in the jungle. G-U-E-R-I-L-L-A is how you describe rebels who are mounting attacks on institutions, installations. It usually happens in third world countries where you have guerrilla forces, guerrilla fighters. It is a way of conducting warfare. He was simply discussing the way she approached the net. She storms the net, and she basically jams your shot back down your throat. There was nothing racist, but the guy's gone. The guy was gone, and it took him, I'm not sure if he's got a job since. I think he has. It's just like in the nation's capital. Some guy there in the city finance department was talking about how there was an area of the budget, and I'm afraid to use the word. Remember this, Mr. Snerdley? This guy described actions of the current mayor, and the way he was using the budget at Washington, D.C. is very niggardly. He's gone. Niggardly means skinflint, means cheap. Means you're a tightwad. It means you never pick up the check. But he's gone. Even though he did not use the word. The left just waits for this kind of stuff to happen. They don't take time to understand, no questions, because as far as they're concerned, the objective is to destroy. Oh yeah, there were some college students broke down and literally started crying when they found banana peels in a tree at Ole Miss. I mean, this idea that DeSantis was engaging in what, dog whistle politics, it's flat out absurd. So now I'm hearing conservatives say that it is outrageous for anybody to think what DeSantis said was actually a dog whistle. But he should apologize immediately anyway, so that there is no doubt. And just say, he didn't mean to say it, he misspoke, he didn't mean it, of course. And so DeSantis, according to the Wizards of Smart, should immediately go on defense here. In terms of people that are going to vote for DeSantis anyway, this isn't going to matter a hill of beans. And I knew when the Access Hollywood video came out. I've told you this before. I'm sorry for repeating myself, but we have people, new listeners tuning in here each and every day who haven't heard some of the stuff that's said weeks or months ago. But when that Access Hollywood video came out in October of 2016, I knew it wasn't going to harm Trump. I may have been the only one, but I was confident it wasn't. And you know why? Because I know the people planning on voting for Trump. And I know that they'd left politics. They had not voted in a long time because they're fed up with this kind of stuff. They're fed up with political parties trying to change their vote on this kind of stuff. A videotape from 10 years ago that has nothing to do with the nation being in crisis right now. And I knew it wasn't going to affect any Trump supporter. I knew the media would find all kinds of people who claimed to be Trump supporters who were no longer going to support Trump, but that was going to be made up. They're going to do the same thing with this. I'm here to tell you, people are fed up with the media and the left trying to make hay out of this stuff that more and more people realize is nothing. Dog whistle. Anyway, a little long. Got to take a quick break, but we'll be back after this. And around with all of this garbage, political distractions. Can't even call a spade anymore without somebody saying you're saying something offensive. Anyway, greetings and welcome back. El Rushbo behind the golden EIB microphone. You know, sometimes something as simple as a story is told about a family member inspires you to go looking for a picture or a video of that person, or maybe a film, a movie or something. Somebody remembers something that happened. Oh, I think we have a picture of that. You go looking for it, you know you have it. But the problem is you can't look at it because it's on an old format. It's on Super 8, or it's on a slide, or it's Betamax or VHS. But you know it's there because you've got the cassettes, you've got the 8mm film, but you can't watch it. How many of you have this stuff around now? We do. I got so much from when I was growing up. I got all kinds. My dad was into Super 8 and then the slide projectors and all this stuff. Well, there's a company called Legacy Box that brings all this stuff back to life. It digitizes it. You send it to them. They send you to Legacy Box. It's shielded. You put all stuff in it. And they digitize it, put it on a DVD or a thumb drive for you. They convert old film, video, and photos to digital files, send them right back to you, where you can then copy them, you can arrange them, you can organize them, you can give copies to other members of the family, and more importantly, keep them forever in a format where they will not deteriorate. You have any idea how many families Legacy Box has done this for now? Try 400,000. They do it right here in Tennessee in a large warehouse with enough gear. And by the way, it's state-of-the-art gear with high-speed transfer, which is the best way to maintain original quality. Legacy Box may be the world's largest operator of VCR machines and Super 8 projectors, and they use them all. The digitizing process, all kinds of quality controls that are built into it so that what you send them is returned safely, as I say, on DVD or thumb drive. Get started right now. LegacyBox.com/rush. 40% off the plan that you choose. It depends on the amount of material that you want to convert. Now, you're going to love the finished result. You're going to be so happy that you did. I mean, you're going to be able to see things that you haven't seen in literally 20 or 30 years if you've got this stuff hanging around your house. Everybody will love looking. I mean, imagine some of your kids and grandkids are going to see things they have never seen or even known happened. LegacyBox.com/rush is the website.
The courage to...
A couple of things today that I didn't get to. We'll do them tomorrow. Bruce Orr and his testimony, but more than that, the FBI guy that was instrumental in the dossier and fascinating things he said about it, and the problem with political diversity, and I think it is Facebook. Yes, we'll see you tomorrow, folks.